Vandana, you can start now.
Okay. One second. Am I audible? I guess the screen has to be rotated. Done. Okay, so hello and welcome to the Bsides Noida 2021 Virtual Edition Conference, Day 1. Besides Security Conference is a community-driven framework for building events for and by information security members. The goal is to expand the spectrum of conversation beyond the traditional confines of space and time. It creates opportunities for individuals as well as to both present and participate in an intimate atmosphere and encourages collaboration. It is an intense event with discussions, demos, and interactions from participants. It is where conversations for the next big thing are happening. I think you all must be knowing already about the Besides Noida conference, and that's why you're here. So, without wasting further time, let me just first introduce our guest today here. His name is Mr. Fardeen Ahmed. His background is he's a backend developer, a system architect, and a network and web pen tester. So, the topic today on which he is going to speak is the future of bug bounty hunting. So, before we start the conversation, before we start the entire session, I have an announcement to make, which will be interesting for many of you guys. So, we have planned to give away the Besides Noida goodies to our participants. Rules will be announced during the meeting. So, don't leave the meeting before it ends, as you could be the winner. And listen to the meeting very carefully, as because Mr. Fardeen Ahmed is a very intelligent man. We have already had an AMA session with them. Then, without any more delay, let's start the conference. Over to you, Mr. Fardeen. You can start sharing your screen and also switch on your mic.
Hey, hi. Very first thing, good evening to all the people, and welcome to all of you to this Beside Noida 2021. And today's topic of discussion, what like from my side to all the viewers, will be regarding the future of bug bounty hunting, like API penetration testing, and why it is the future of bug bounty hunting. Well, let's clear this thing first. The future of bug bounty hunting and API penetration testing has a very small relation. Okay, the very first relation is right now most of the web applications and all those things are getting patched up or having web application firewalls and all those things, and APIs are also getting strengthened up day by day. But in return, most of the things, if you inspect in the best way possible, then APIs are always going to be vulnerable in the if an attacker has to be taken then in the best way possible, if attacker's perspective is, and for developers and organizations, it's the worst thing that you can ever deal with. Okay, so we'll be talking about it and we'll be moving further. So just an introduction about myself. My name is Fardeen Ahmed, and a security and a researcher, and also a programmer. Most of my work is in analyst part and research part, and in my free time I code. Generally, I don't code that much heavy products and all those things, small tools, and quite some contributions I've also done at GSOC also, some of it. Then apart from that, my recent achievement include one of the critical bugs that I found at CISF, and it was not at all related to NCIIPC. So don't take it in that way. I found it at CISF. It was a project that they were dealing with, and they were having some kind of issue with them. and I help them out, and eventually they'll be providing me with some kind of appreciation of token and all those things. And this was a very different sector part of India, so it was good. Apart from that, I have secured Canva, Mastercard, and other companies also, and through which I've got some small great bounties and things like that. So today's topic of discussion will be about what an API is, or application programming interfaces. Then we'll be discussing about its significance in web applications and mobile application and all those things. Then we'll be discussing about what are the types of APIs and what should be the implementation and how they are implemented. It will be a very brief discussion, so it is not going to bore you out. Then we'll be discussing about OWASP top 10 API vulnerabilities. We'll move towards bug bounty sections, where most of the emphasis will be on reconnaissance and finding your own first API vulnerability. Then we'll be dealing with the very approach, like my approach to the API penetration testing. Like, there are a lot of people and having their own approach, and I respect everyone's, but this is what I do. And then we'll be like dealing with difficulties and duplicates, because just let's face it, whatever we find it, like seriously, whatever we find it, people are like always like they found a bug and they found a flaw and they reported it in any RDP or VDP or any private products or projects of the organization, but they're not rewarded with it and they are very much agitated and irritated. We'll be dealing with that also, that how to overcome those stuffs, and we'll be concluding with a very strong motivation for all the new bug hunters which are watching, all the pen testers, and to the security researchers. So let's start, shall we? So application programming interface, aka API. Okay. Mostly organizations have that belief that the best way to make the functionality as robust as possible is to implement the APIs with the application, and we have to make our application as secured as possible. But what happens is, when they are not able to implement APIs with respect to the applications, either web application or the Android applications, then it exposes a lot of vulnerabilities, and that vulnerability most probably is the sensitive information disclosure. Okay, now these information disclosure may be regarding to the company's assets. It can be PII, means personal identifiable informations, that is regarding your name, email address. Many of you have heard, right, recent past months only, that Domino's got hacked and their whole data was leaked and all those things. That was nothing but a kind of API attack only. Okay, it was not regarding their application. See, one of the inputs of the API, like one of the endpoints of the within the web application, which was corresponding to an API call, was malfunctioned. A small fuzz was done, and it revealed all the information that was to be not to be present in front of the public in the JSON form. And it was a very bad way of securing the stuff. It was the most insecure way possible. Like, big companies, not only Domino's, in fact Air India also, they had the same thing. So that's why people generally take CISO in a very, they're like, okay, he's speaking about information security and all those things, but organization don't take. Right now they are taking it, but previously they were not that much into security. They're like, okay, fine, we'll be spending like around what do you say, 1/10 of whatever we are earning through our revenues and all those things. But they didn't had that much of emphasis to make it as much clear as possible for the organization to be secured. But hackers are hackers, and they tried their level best, and they found out some vulnerabilities and they were able to expose it. So now we'll be discussing in a very short way about what APIs generally are. Okay. Now, an API, people generally say that they are software. They say that it's kind of a system. It's like many people things virtually. These all are being saved in databases, and these databases are being called out through APIs. So APIs is nothing but an intermediary that takes your request, doesn't process it just directly directs it to the processing area, and just feed it to the database that yes, this is the part through which what you have to take it out. The API gets the information. So API basically is nothing but a socket socket, and we our request is nothing but a plug. And when we plug it out and we just switch it on the fan or anything like that, when we are having a fan or something like that, when we just switch it on, the fan works. The same thing is with APIs also. One request, we put it in the API. Like for example, if we comment it, whatever we write, okay, whenever we are just sending it or we are just posting it, that button sends the API that yes, this comment is being made, and it has to be sent to the database which is to be stored and all those things. Okay, these are stored in temporary as well as a permanent basic, and there are a lot of things that is done through API. Okay, the work of API includes like sending and receiving requests, parameterizing inputs, and increasing the legitimacy of the functionality of the web application. So this is a very small implementation. There is an API gateway, okay, which works under a backend, and there are a lot of things that you can see. There is a microservices area, then there is a microservice 2 API area and 3 area, and then these are the sub application that works traditionally and normally. Okay, so the main part is what we have to focus on is how these connections are there. Okay, the very first connection is like, suppose this is an API, and when we just request it, like we put a like, or would we put a comment, or we just request to search on Google or anything like that, the API gets your input, it encodes it, it sends it back to the database gets to know about, oh, these are the things that he wants to know about. Okay, he wants to know about Instagram, he wants to know about Sundar Pichai, he wants to know about, so these are the things he API gets to know. API sent it to the database gets to know, database took out the search query, it feeds it through the API, and API calls back from backend to the front end your request. So that's how, like in the general way possible, APIs are working. Okay, so there are a lot of types of APIs. Like generally, people are building like from small APIs, big API, huge APIs. Those APIs that are to be run back and for one function or multiple function or multiple ways or paradigm to be used by the API to be implemented on the front end as well as in the back end. And these are like four types of basic APIs, like open API or public API, partner API, private or internal API, or composite API. Now, like we all know, we all are students, and we all were students as well as our students, and we used to be within our campus and all those things. So people generally of the campus, like admin and ID people, they use it. They generally use either partner API or internal or private APIs. Okay, so partner APIs like AWS APIs and Google APIs and all those things. These are common as a partner API, and when we are using some functionalities that are very much immensely to be used, which is quietly to be used as a, what do you say, for internal works and functionalities and all those things. So we are using partner API, and they are quite related to open API also. Then now open APIs are those APIs that are readily available. They can be implemented anytime. They can be used at as much as fast as possible. They are open source, and they are very much good. But when you're not dealing good with the APIs, then your information and the requests are handled, and there what vulnerability lies. Okay, and composite APIs are complicated APIs. So these are just basic things that you should know about, like general thing, and these are the things what you have to pay more emphasis on: the REST, the SOAP, and the RPC API. REST API is in the world right now is being used like most of the places, because it consists of a lot of functionalities. It provides good what do you say, URL payback. Like you are able to get the request in the most optimized way. Okay, it's not about the fastest way, but it is the most optimized way, because developers want optimization which is better or more important than finding any kind of hodgepodge kind of a API. And that hodgepodge kind of an API is nothing but a SOAP API. Okay, SOAP is one of the most, what you say, complicated API to be implemented. Okay, now REST API is easy to implement, but it's quite difficult to secure it in the most of the places. Like, okay, you'll be able to secure it, but there will be a lot of vulnerabilities that we'll be discussing on the REST APIs. Okay, that what are the different kinds of vulnerabilities that you're able to find on REST APIs. Okay, the SOAP API is very complicated, but it's complicated to implement. Okay, but it's much more secure as compared to REST API. But the where the problem lies is the SOAP APIs are the things that are right now being exploited in the best way possible, because SOAP APIs have to be updated in the most generic way possible, but they take quite a long time to update and all those things. These are some developer stuff, and then third is the RPC API, which are generally used but not in that much of bulk. They are used just like that. Okay, so not that much. So we have to put attention over REST API as well as SOAP APIs. So REST APIs is optimized, SOAP API is also optimized, but not that much as compared to REST API. SOAP API is difficult to implement than REST. REST APIs are generally found to be vulnerable, but if a minute or if a major part, if one has to research on, then SOAP APIs, if not implemented properly, then it is vulnerable. So SOAP comes first and REST comes the second. So now we'll be discussing about the vulnerabilities. Okay, the OWASP top 10 API vulnerabilities. OWASP, just if I have to speak about, then OWASP started as a project by 3 nerds or 5 nerds. Okay, and then it became a community that is like seriously that is paying a lot of payback to all the security researchers, and it gives the best thing that you can ever imagine, and that is the indexed vulnerabilities. Okay. API is API, or whether it's web or whether it's mobile, everything they just whatever they research it or find it out, they just create an index of it and they just publish it so that they can be or they might be used in the future instances also. So OWASP is right now an organization, and that full form is Open Web Application Security Project. OWASP generally creates 10 like creates an list of 10 API vulnerabilities. This one is 10. Like more, all of it is consists of 10 only, and 10 indexed vulnerabilities. And these 10 indexed vulnerabilities consist of another kind of vulnerabilities that are being used generally by bug hunters for chaining and all those things. That's an exploitation part. That's quite a huge, but still, it should be known to the people. So the very first thing one should know about is broken object level authorization. Okay, what is broken object level authorization, or BOLA? So like we just call it. So BOLA vulnerability is just like indirect object referencing. Okay, now what is indirect object referencing? A kind of vulnerability where you are able to change the response, and in return what you get is the access of those information that is hidden. Okay, so what it is like, just example, you get a parameter and there was your session ID or UID, and when you just change the UID or the session ID, you will be able to get to know about that a section of your access to the another like you will be able to access another account's information. When you're able to access another account's information, then that vulnerability is known as broken object level authorization, or IDOR. In web applications and APIs, it's a broken object level authorization. The second is the broken authentication, which is and will be till the time when people will be like normal humans will be programming web application and all those things. Then broken authentication is going to be the huge vulnerability to all those places, because most of the scanners are not able to scan the vulnerabilities that are found that are within the broken authentication part, just like finding some secret tokens or finding leaking some API keys and all those things. That comes between broken authentication as well as excessive data disclosure. Broken authentication also includes some two-factor authentication or OAuth bypasses, and there are a lot of things that comes under broken authentication. More of it is like general, as well as level third to level second kind of vulnerabilities, which are always paid in a huge amount if chained properly. The third comes the excessive data disclosure. This is like you're fuzzing an endpoint, and in return you get a place where you will be able to get some PII information about name or number or anything like that, regarding a huge list of it. The same thing that happened with the dominoes that I discussed way before. The fourth one is the lack of resources or the rate limiting. Rate limiting is a condition where a person that a request is not put to a limit. Let's, for example, if we want to see a YouTube video, okay, if we reload it like 100 times for like 5 minutes, then it is very much optimized, so we are able to see the video of YouTube, that same video. Now, for example, what happens if you within a 10 to 20 seconds, if you are able to, rate out around 500 requests. So within 10 to 15 seconds, when you're able to find, like, rate out the like 500 plus, then the the request that will be sent through the API will be in bulk form within the database, and it might make the database either crash or either it makes the web browser crash. But in most of the cases, generally it affects the backend of the database. Apart from the apart from rate limiting in this scenario, another scenario is the bulk request or no rate limiting regarding acceptance of the on the forms and all those things. So you can just automate this process. You can create your own tool and you can go over it. And the lack of resources, it's like there is no security header on that in such a way that there is no request parameter to be sanitized. So that's what lack resources is all about. Broken function level authorization, it is like when you are a user and when you're able to bypass your user privileges to admin privilege, then that is very just about what BFLA or broken function level or attacks is like SQL injection, command injection, cross-site scripting, and all those things. Improper asset management is about regarding if a scope has been given to you, and with proper fuzzing, if you're able to get to those assets which are being not included in the vulnerability management programs, but still they are critical. Okay, like for example, you have been given a part of researching on a particular topic or on a particular domain only, and you're able to get to know about, oh, okay, so there is a place where most of the sensitive token as well as passwords and now IDs are also present there. So this is a kind of improper asset management. And last one is insufficient logging and monitoring, and this is quite not found generally. It is like generated and mitigated through scanners only, so we don't discuss that much, but still that is also a vulnerability. So this was one of the bug that I found way before, like not here, like this is after some before time only. Like it was like, for example, I got to one domain, and within domain there was an API.php part, and then there was a user parameter. Okay, and that user parameter was giving some kind of information. So I thought of why not to try an injection attack. So I tried it, and I was able to get to know about what their database was like and what the second parameter was all about. But the second version just reflected what the parameter it accepts it. Like it was not encoding it, but I was able to get to know about the backend. So I thought of why not to try the SQL injection. So I put up, just I took it and sent it to the skill to the repeat part, and then just fuzzed it. And I just first sent it to the intruder part. Then I fuzzed the endpoint, which was this at about the select this one. Okay. I used the union part of SQL injection, which was good, the same thing. And then I was able to successfully get almost of the schemas and collaborated part, which like information disclosure from it. So now we'll be discussing about finding your own first API vulnerabilities and exploiting them ethically. Like generally what happens is APIs, people generally regard APIs are okay, it's a new thing, and the implementation of API should be done very properly and all those things. And finding a bug in APIs is quite difficult, and sometimes people will say it's very easy, some will say it's only about the play of API keys. But in reality, finding an API vulnerability requires a lot of things. Like it's about 70 to 30 ratio. 70% is reconnaissance and 30% it's exploitation. Okay, so let's move on. I parameterized my reconnaissance methodology into these four parts. Okay, the first is the passive recon, second is active recon, third is exploitation for the recon, and after effects recon. So the passive recon is like inspecting the scope. Okay, what inspecting the scope? For example, I got it like example.com or I got google.com. Okay, so very first thing what I will be doing. No, I should not be like testing Google and finding it through Google, but still Google helps a lot of it. Like 99% times, Google is very helpful in it. So passive incomes is like passive reconnaissance. It's like, inspecting the scope. We get at google.com, we find it through Google, we go to Shodan, we go to most of the places where we can find the sensitive information and the endpoints. Always remember, whenever you are dealing with API vulnerabilities, it should always be first the endpoints. Why? Because let's face it, the way it has been implemented, it will be very much normal, and it will look like, oh, there will be encoding or there is some kind of WAF applied and all those things. But one of the best feature of a bug hunter or a bug bounty hunter is to dig deep as much as possible, even if it is a functionality. Okay, so inspect as much as possible through Google, see the source code, what is the call they are being doing it, and everything. So inspect the scope. The second is active reconnaissance. Now, active reconnaissance, generally what people do is the first active, then passive. So it's your way of doing it. Mine is first do the passive and then the active one. The active one considers, like, this is what I generally find out, is to use the prime scanners. Okay, there are a lot of scanners in the market. I generally create I generally create some command interface and all those, like not command interface, some my own tools. I use it. I do it manually. There are some prime scanners. I generally use Derb and Derbuster, Dersearch, and also in APIs. Sometimes it helps in finding endpoints through Reconnaissance. It helps a lot. Exploitation part, then I've used it to the places such as GitHub. The it's a gold mine, by the way. Okay, GitHub, Exploit, DB, and Nest. Like, seriously, it's a best place. These are the best places to get the exploits for finding any kind of vulnerability. Now, suppose API version 1 is being implemented. Okay, and API version 2 is in the research. So even if you get API version 1 and you're just fuzzing the user place, and you just get a sensitive information about that this technology which is being used is quite outdated. So even if you report that thing, it's awardable. So it helps a lot. Like 70% of my work works in this way only. And the after effects is like reporting the reconnaissance. Why reporting the reconnaissance part? Only because most of the bugs that are found are not critical, but these are the bugs like which are being made or being available to the people because of the developer's mistake. Okay, so most of the reconnaissance part is very much efficient, and it is very much important for all the new bug hunters as well as to the old bug hunters, because they all know about that reconnaissance, very important part. Most of the sensitive key tokens and all those things, it's all available on GitHub, and when we just dig deep as much as possible, we get it. Then what are the endpoints that should be tested? Suppose there is a endpoint which is tells about version 1 about any api.php, then we should change it, and we should look forward it, like over it. Okay, and then we should add any user parameter, the very second part. For example, there are a lot of parameters. There will be user, there will be destination, there will be IDs, there will be UIDs. You have to find it. Like on GitHub, there is a complete list of it. On my Instagram, I'll be just posting it, a complete list of it, and through that you can get through it. Okay, and after users, you can just fuzz the endpoints. You can encode the this symbol, and it is going to be a very good thing. The third one is to get the etc password, which is very much. By the way, the vulnerability that I got in the SQL injection was this second part only. Through this only I got it. The third one, sorry, I wrote it the second one. Okay, so the third one of API.php is the etc password, which is like, it is not generally found, but if found, it gives you a huge amount of like monetary award, a huge amount. Okay, the next one is the finding any parameters. These one, for finding an SQL injection and then finding a destination or anything like that. These two can be used for, for cross-site scripting also, for injection attacks, any kind of injection attacks. Okay, and finding any file inclusions, you can also work over that also. Then approach to learn API penetration testing. Now, all the people who are in this meet should know that APIs, whatsoever you are dealing with, you have to and you should learn about what Postman tool is. Postman tool is a tool that is generally used by the developers to see the requests, the testing requests, as well as those requests that are to be used during the production as well as to the end line. Now, what happens is whenever a new developer or quite a new developer or some experienced developer, what they do is they are not, if they are not using Postman tool properly and they are not using it or implementing it properly on the website or in web application, then it itself pose a very big vulnerability. So if a tester knows about Postman tool, and it is always going to give him or the a niche, means a push, means a +1 point over the developers and security team to find a vulnerability, and do configure it with respect to Burp Suite. Okay, because there, let's face it, whatever the request which will be made through Postman tool to the Burp Suite, for the testing purpose, Burp Suite should be there with the Postman tool. The second one is the key to API pen testing is Reconnaissance, as I discussed. If you know about GitHub, if you know about anything like that, GitHub, or you know about ExploitDB, learn its functionalities and learn to dig deep as much as possible. Okay, because in Reconnaissance part, you get most of the things. Like for example, you get an endpoint, you fuzz it through Derbuster, Derb search, and anything like that, and any tool like that. So most of the things, what you will be getting, or most of the, the last point, means the last endpoints and last thing that you want is the vulnerability that you want to find out, like injection attack, anything like that. So that endpoint, if not fuzzed properly through Derburst or Dersearch, that endpoint, if it is not found out also, then you cannot fuzz any point. Like for example, if there is a user one, like suppose if this was the condition. If you don't know about user parameter, or even if you know user parameter, and then this symbol is encoded, then your fuzzing is not going to end up in a good way, but rather you're going to be disappointed. What you should know is to learn how this encoding is being done, see the request how it is being made out. Okay, so reconnaissance is the very first key. Second is to select the start, mid, and end point of the generated API request. So the start point is this, the midpoint is this slash, and then open bracket, and this is the end point, which is the fuzzing point. When you are able to encode these things and then you are able to fuzz the point, you might find it some kind of sensitive information. Now if you double encode it and then do it, you might find another one, or even you won't be able to find it. So you have to test and try each and every method and each and every way to test it. Okay, the third one is to use of fuzzers, as I told, using Derbuster, Derb, or manual tools that I generally use it. But using fuzzers makes our work easy, but not confirmatory, because fuzzers generally give a lot of false positives. So you should be aware of these, fuzzers. Okay. The second one is the generally flaws that like a general new person should find out is about SQL injection, about cross-site scripting, about BOLA, means broken object level authorization, and finding sensitive information disclosure, and improper asset management. Now, why I chose these vulnerabilities only, and why not? There are a lot of vulnerabilities that can be found out and all those things. Basically, when you'll be dealing with SQL injection or cross-site scripting or BOLA or sensitive information disclosure like PII and API keys, if API key is found and if it is exploitable, then, and if sensitive token found and if it is exploitable, then. So why only I found out these vulnerabilities? Because these vulnerabilities are all time hit vulnerabilities. This means that it is always going to pay you. Even if you found a duplicate vulnerability on any RDP or VDP, still they will be like, okay, this is working still, now we are working over it, but you found something, as a token of appreciation, will be providing you something. Okay, and cross-site scripting also. cross-site scripting does prey, especially the stored cross-site scripting. It's quite difficult to trigger it, but if it is triggered, it's a level 2 vulnerability, which is very good. Then broken object level authorization or BOLA, this is always payable. Even if you get a duplicate, still it is payable, because if like generally IDOs, like indirect object referencing, are always sanitized with inputs and changing the numbers and numerals to the another number to access the any others information, or the user's information is not always available. Like once it is found, it should be patched up, and if it is not patched up, then it's the security team issue. So if they say that we have found this duplicate, or we have found this as a duplicate report, then you can inquire back and tell them that even if it is a duplicate, you should have mitigated it, but the security team hasn't, then you should be awarded, like definitely. Then sensitive information disclosure regarding PII and API keys. Like if you find API keys which are exploitable in nature, like suppose many a times some of the students have also reached out to me and asked, like, for example, sir, if I found an API key, how should I implement that or use that API key? I always tell them that, see, if you get an API key, don't just stand there and say that, oh, I got an API key, hooray, hooray. No, don't do that. Just never do that. Or you get a sensitive token, never do that. Okay. Try to exploit that vulnerability. Okay. Exploit that vulnerability, create a POC, write your steps of reproduction, and then pay it back to them. Or just send it back to them. What happens is, they get to know about your API keys and vulnerability. They'll be like, okay, we got it. So they'll be telling you this is not a sensitive information, and we'll be regarding it as whatever it is, an information disclosure. We respect your finding, but we can't reward it. So what at the back end, what they do, they remediate that thing. Okay, so try to find API keys and then get that API points through Google. Like you should know about how to Google stuff, and using Google, find that API endpoint. You can use Showdown also. Showdown gives you a bigger push towards Reconnaissance. Okay, to that endpoint also. If you know good about Showdown, then it gives you more push. Use that API key, implement at that parameter, and then find anything which is regarding to PII. Once you get a PII, means personal identifier information, under the sensitive information disclosure, then you are always paid huge bounties, just like 5K or 10K, means 5,000 or $10,000, or more than that also. Okay. Recently, Tom Nom got it on API vulnerability only, like $39,000 something. And you and your best friend, no doubt, is GitHub, ExploitDB, Google, and Showdown. So use them as much as possible. This is Showdown. This is about Postman tool, and this is Derburster. So you learned everything about what should you know, but where to learn it, these are the places where you should learn it. Okay. Learning places is the Contra. Contra is the biggest hub right now to learn about API penetration testing. Like live labs are there, step-by-step things are there, like step-by-step introduction, step-by-step discussion. And they not teach, but they provide that platform where you can learn as fast as possible. This is the Burp Suite, means support Swigger Labs that created Burp Suite tool. This is about Postman. Now, if you're not a reader, then go for these three things. Not these three, these two things. This one you have to know about. You should know about Postman tool. So Contra and Burp Suite, these two places is the best place where you should know what you should know about how to learn it. Like what is the place through which you should learn, like what is the place where one can learn as a student. Okay. And if you're not a practical person but you want to strengthen your core, then these four books are very much good. Mastering Modern Web Pen Testing, there are many sections of API pen testing in it, like OAuth and all those things. API testing and development with Postman, this is going to give you a niche on about what API penetration testing is, about REST APIs, SOAP APIs, and different other kinds of APIs. Okay. My favorite is this advanced API security, because this completes most of the vulnerabilities and chained procedure to how they are testing it. And then there is API security in active action, which is also a good normal book. Okay. So we are now in the last section of the presentation, which is dealing with the duplicates and difficulties. Just my own thought, I just wanted to say that I have found out like around 230 plus bugs in this pandemic, and out of which only seven was rewardable. Okay, so 230 bucks and seven were rewardable. Why? Because most of the like just 230 minus seven, 223 bugs. These all bugs were either marked as duplicate or not rewarded or will be rewarded by or something like that, but they didn't pay ping back, and they never paid back or anything like that. They didn't just cared about what vulnerability it was. Most of the vulnerability that I found out was injections, and then I found out about sensitive information disclosure and API key mismatchment, then mass assignment and all those things. So I didn't get anything in return through these bug bounties and stuff. Okay, I didn't get like 223 bugs. I didn't get anything in return. The first bug, what I found out, the very first bug in this API penetration testing, the first bug, what I found out, I was not awarded for that. It was said that thank you for your reference, but this is we got from another researcher, and we appreciate your work. That's it. This was the only thing that they found out, and they just pushed out. So the very first thing what every new researcher should know is to leave the expectations about your monetary or awards or bounty or swag and anything like that. Okay. If you find a bug, just if you find a bug, that's a very good thing. Okay. On getting bug to be expected, just don't leave expectations about whether it is going to be triaged or not also. Just find a bug. If you're a new learner, just find your bug in front of yourself. Like you get a bola means project broken object level authorization, you get a rate limiting, only the least one that I consider it. If you get a rate limiting, you find it, you create a POC, you use the steps of reproduction, and then just send it away. You don't have to think that much about of it. Okay, and just don't think about bounty and anything like that. First learn as much as possible. Okay, and then quarrel about you should be given bounty or not. Second one is to read one flaw or bug at a time. Now, what happened is, suppose I've seen on LinkedIn, on many platforms, that what people do is they post it like, I was awarded for this bug. Even they don't disclose the bug, they just showed that this much monetary award I was given. So if a person who's experienced bug bounty hunter or a tester, they'll be like, oh, fine, no issues. That's a good thing. You got a good amount of bounty. But for the new people, it is going to be a huge blow. It will be like, oh my god, this guy is earning so much, and how I'll be able to earn over it. Bug bounty is the first perspective is this: if a person is in bug bounty, the new people, and the person who are just wandering here and there, and if they get to know about this attracts bug bounty like new people towards the bug bounty hunting. They'll be like, oh, this is the place that I should do it. Like this is the thing that I should do it because it's giving a huge amount of bounty. Most of the people don't, or not at all, put their failures on the places. Okay, they just don't put the failures like, I got my reward after 7 reports, or they won't be saying that I got my first SQL injection after 300 plus vulnerabilities. They won't, because people want to show off to the people, to other people, so that see that I am earning this much amount of bounty, and people should congratulate him. So getting validation from others, it's better to get self validated. Okay, even if another person found a bug, let it his bug only. He found it, it's his approach. One should concentrate on his way of finding, because let's face it, we should be available to only those people who are in front of us. Okay, like we should be very much, if even if we want validation, we should that want that validation also from only near ones, like your parents. Okay, if you show it to them, they'll be like, okay, fine, it's very good, it's awesome, then it's a very good thing. And if they are not appreciating also, like many times it happens that people don't appreciate. I told my mother once that I got this bug, and she was like, okay, that's good, did you hunt it out? Like, hunt it out? Yeah, I hunted, that's why I got the bug. And she was like, no, 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 why didn't you swat it out? You should have killed it. I'm like, no, 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 I didn't found that bug. I found a bug on web application, ma'am. And through that, my mother, she was like, okay. Then I explained everything what it is all about. She's like, okay, if you are free, then do it. Otherwise, if you're not free, then don't do it, please. Even if you're doing it, then it is going to be, it is going to give you a huge blow on your studies and all those things. So if you are a student, definitely do bug bounty hunting. I will always suggest you, because everyone wants to earn some cash and want to learn anything. Okay, so if you are in cybersecurity, okay, the big thing what you can do is to learn these flaws and apply it, so that you, even if you are like previous day, one of the speaker Tushar told in a very good way that if you find a flaw and if you are not about it, still you can add it in your resume. If you are getting any kind of point or any kind of hall of fame, so you can add it in your resume. That gives more impression, because that money and swag is going to get fade away in some or the other way, but that reputation and that hall of fame is going to push you more in your life. Okay, third thing is thinking creatively. Okay, most of the bug hunters are different from each other because they have one niche. Okay, and they are doing it, and they are doing a very good thing. Okay, so for like most of the creativity stuff, it is found there only. Like just for example, like this is the creativity part, uh, and there or any other researcher is there. Okay, we both are working constantly for each other, but our methodology is different. I can find a skill injection within 5 minutes, the other person can find it within 15 or 20 minutes, or even not, they cannot find out. So every person had different ways. Okay, the fourth one is to be ready for the best and get prepared for the worst, which is attached to the second point only. Find whatever you want to and don't compare yourself. And even if you don't get anything in return, still appreciate that thing. Okay. Fifth one is to have a ready to learn mindset. Don't think of earning first, think to learn first as much as possible. It doesn't matter whether it's only a demark record. If even if you get a demark record and you exploit it and tell it to the people, then still you will be given some account of bounty or account of kind of monetary awards. You might get it. So never stop learning. Okay, learn as much as possible. Finding new bugs are more rewardable sometimes, as I explained here, that find the duplicate bugs and getting an hall of fame and putting it in your resume, it gives you more bigger push than anything else. Then seventh is to find the difference between risk and vulnerability. What happens is generally people find risk and not vulnerability, and that plays a very bad thing. And at last, I would be just ending it by saying that read as much as possible, accept your failures, and use Google as much as possible. That is going to help you out. And if you want to reach me in any way, these three are places where you can reach me. So I'm available on Twitter, Instagram, and you can put your questions on Core also. And that is all from my side. And thank to all the people who were the viewers. I hope you learned something in return. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being here. It was a very, very informative talk we have had for past 1